to BLT 2020. A round of applause for the well over 100 people who are tuning in this evening live on Zoom. And for all those watching live on the Bushy Shaw Facebook group and on YouTube, well, one and all to have you all here this evening. If I may just take one quick opportunity just to mention that our BLT series is dedicated in honor and in blessed memory of Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, Zichrono Livracha. It's everything that we do is Le'ilui Nishmas Harav Yaakov Tzvi ben Reb David Aryeh, who an amazing chief rabbi and a huge loss to the Jewish community. And so it's very special that we're able to mark the BLT program in that evening. On behalf of the Feldman, the senior rabbi Elchanan Feldman of Bush United Synagogue, and Rebbetzin Jacqueline, and on behalf of myself and Shira as well, it is such an honor and such a privilege to be able to kick off this program this evening with a truly amazing speaker with a truly amazing story. We are so privileged to host Judge Rachel Freier, Judge Ruchi Freier. They're one of the same person. And there is so much that she's going to share, so much of an opportunity that we have to be able to ask her questions a little bit later on. For now, we're actually going to start with a few minutes of a video that gives us a little glimpse and a little snapshot as to who we are so excited and so privileged to be able to hear from this evening.
As we continue our week-long series, She's Got Faith, today we meet Rachel Freier, who is challenging the norm when it comes to her very traditional religion. Being a woman of Hasidic Jewish faith typically means rejecting jobs outside of the home. And yet, Judge Rachel Freier is anything but typical. Watch. Rachel Freier has accomplished many firsts in her life. At 52, the New York judge is, to her knowledge, the first Hasidic Jewish woman in U.S. history to hold public office. She says she didn't accomplish that feat in spite of her faith, but because of it.
I happen to be a very religious person. It's my belief in and my faith that really gives me the strength. It gives me the backbone that I need.
Freier married at age 19 and says she thought she'd be content to spend her life as a legal secretary. But a decade later, she wanted more.
I decided to go to higher education when I was 30. At that point, I had been a legal secretary for many years, and I said, I just can't be a secretary my whole life. And I said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to try. Because I don't want to be a grandmother and years from now tell my grandchildren, well, Bobby could have done it. That's the Yiddish word for grandma. But she didn't. I had to try.
After law school, Freier worked in corporate law. In 2016, she ran for office and was elected a New York civil court judge. Soon after, she was assigned to criminal court, an area of law she says she loves.
I like to think of myself as a trailblazer, laying down the path and the framework for other people to follow and do something similar. I never consider myself like a ceiling breaker because there's always another obstacle that's in front of me. Always something more to break.
Even though Freier works long hours, she still makes time for what's most important in her life. Her faith, praying 3 times a day, and her family. A mother of 6, she takes care to spend time with her children and her grandchildren, especially over the holidays. Freier proudly embodies what it means to be a modern career woman, yet at the same time says she is very traditional when it comes to her faith.
I believe that women are capable. I believe that women have abilities, can achieve a lot. But when it comes to my religion, I embrace the roles of the traditional Jewish woman. My role is being a mother, being there for my children, but it doesn't mean I can't be a professional.
And at work, her faith is always nearby.
I have the best seat in the house, because wherever I sit in this courthouse, above me are the words emblazoned, "In God we trust." And that always puts me into perspective. Whatever decision I make, there's a God above me.
The New York Times calls her the Hasidic Superwoman of Night Court, and she is here now, Judge Rachel Freier. Great to have you. All right, so let's just start with that. Can you please explain how you both work full-time as a judge and get home? You do the cooking and the cleaning for 6 children and grandchildren?
Well, I do have help. I will say I do have help. Help with the cleaning, that's for sure. But I love cooking. Yeah, I do it. I just go through every day. I take it one step at a time.
Now, is it true that in the Hasidic community, it is very rare, it's not the norm for a woman to work outside the home at all?
Well, over time, it's become more accepted. But to do what I've been doing, that is a bit unusual.
And I was told it's unusual even for the men to go to college. So your husband did it, and then you were sitting there thinking, what about me?
Yeah, it was at his graduation when I said, it's my turn, now it's my turn.
Did he give you any pushback?
No, not at all. He was very supportive.
So he's more progressive in his thinking?
Yeah, he's my biggest supporter.
Okay. So then you decide to do what no other, we think, Hasidic woman has done before, which is run for office. You wanted to become a judge. So New York State Supreme?
Right now I'm in civil, but I was assigned to criminal, but I ran for civil court. So actually, you know, people make a big deal about me being the first Hasidic woman, but I think the bigger deal is my husband being the first Hasid that allowed his wife to run for public office, supported my campaign, ran around getting signatures for me, telling people to vote for my wife. That was really a big deal. It really was.
What about, like, what's one of the incredible things about your story is that not only are you sitting on the bench and taking care of your family, but would you care to tell the audience what you do in your spare time?
I don't really have spare time.
Somehow you've managed to find it to launch this EMT business.
Well, that was really my deal with God. Help me get through law school without compromising my religious values. Then when your children need help and come to me for help, I will help them. That's how I got involved with working with kids at risk in my community. And that's how I got involved with helping the EMTs.
Are you driving around an ambulance?
Not yet. That's our next project.
That's her goal.
That's our next project, yeah.
I don't know how you manage all of it. And so speak to me about that line that you didn't succeed despite your faith. You succeeded because of it.
Yes, because I feel that my religion gives me the strength and the backbone that I need. When I pray to God, give me the strength, give me the success. And ultimately, I believe that everything is in God's hands. All we have to do is try, make your efforts, give the best shot that you can. And then if God wants it to happen, it's going to happen. When I announced that I was going to run for civil court, people looked at me like I was crazy. Like, what are you thinking? Why are you doing this? And someone even said to me, we really like you, but how could we support you? Because we were told that a Hasidic woman can never win a borough park. And I looked them straight in the eye and I said, if God wants me to win, I'm going to win.
She told the New York Times that she wants somebody to look her in the face and say that religious women can't do it. She's going to make mincemeat out of them. Judge, it's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be right back.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'm going to hand you over, Judge Rachel Freier.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. It's a privilege and an honor to be here with you. I don't get to go to visit the land of England too often, but lately I've been to London a number of times, and it's absolutely always an honor and a privilege. So, Rabbi, I just want to confirm with you the format of our talk today. Is it okay if I talk for about like 15, 20 minutes and start sharing my story and my journey, and then perhaps open the floor for questions? Is that something that works for you, Rabbi?
The floor is yours, Judge, and
okay.
We're in your capable hands.
All right. Okay, fine. So I'm just going to give everybody a little bit of a disclaimer. Once we open the floor for questions, the only questions that I won't be able to discuss are questions about politics, not this country or any other country, as well as any court cases. But other than that, we have a lot of area that we can cover. So I'm going to start by saying that we're all different. God created us differently. We come from different communities, different backgrounds, different customs, different traditions. But by the time I finish speaking, I think we're going to find that we have so much more in common that we have that divides us. We're going to see that we have more similarities than differences. So let me start by sharing with you my background, how I grew up, where I come from, how I got to where I am today, and what I have learned along my journey. I always say that I usually get about 30 minutes to share about 30 years of my life, and I try to be consistent, but usually I go out of order, so you really have to pay attention. And Rabbi, every time I speak, it comes out different. God just prepares my words for the audience. So hopefully it's going to be a great program tonight. I graduated high school at the age of 17, and I grew up in a very ultra-Orthodox Hasidic family. I came from a humble family, not rich, not connected politically, no great rabbinical dynasty, just great, simple people are how I can classify my parents. I wasn't pushed. My parents didn't make me feel like I must do well in school, like some of my friends felt pushed. My parents just wanted we should just try our best. My mother, who I consider my best friend, used to tell us when we were growing up as kids, you could do anything you want to do, so long as it isn't illegal, immoral, or against the Torah. So here I was growing up, ultra-Orthodox, but to me, the world was wide open with opportunity. I never felt that I was oppressed. I never felt that there was something that I wanted to do, I couldn't do. I knew there were rules, but if we followed the rules, we could succeed. My father, he had such confidence in us as his children. We could do no wrong. The only thing that he would focus on was our manners, derech eretz, character. When he would come to a PTA for school, the first and most important question he would ask the teacher is, how does my daughter behave? What's her character like? The grades that we got on our exams, that wasn't really so important. In fact, I was a very average student. Some people think that I must have been an excellent student or a valedictorian student. And the answer is I really wasn't. I was just an average student. A couple of years ago, when my youngest daughters were in their senior year of high school, by the way, I have 6 children, 3 boys and 3 girls, just in that order. And, I have to start lying about my kid's age because my oldest son is past 30 already, and it's just hard to believe. So my youngest are a set of twin girls. A couple of years ago, they were in their senior year of high school. 5 children are married. My youngest one is getting married in 3 weeks. So right now I'm actually shopping for her and taking a break from shopping to speak to this lovely audience. So I go to the PTA for my daughters, and the teacher there says, Ruchi, you look familiar. I think I was in your sister's class. So I look at her and I say, yeah, you're right. You are in my sister's class. And she says to me, did you become a lawyer? And I say, yes, I did. And she says to me, come to think of it, I don't remember you being one of the smart girls in the class. And you know something, she was right. I was not known as a popular girl or a smart girl. I was just an average girl. And my point is that my journey is a journey of an average girl who graduates high school, becomes a legal secretary, then has the dream to become a lawyer and then a judge. And along my journey, every step of the way, it was filled with naysayers. Every corner of my journey, every step of my journey, every rung of the ladder, there was always someone there telling me, it's impossible, it can't happen. And my answer would always be, if God wants it to happen, it's going to happen. I grew up in a school, ultra-Orthodox school, and my teachers always told us that we were created in the image of God, B'Tselem Elokim. We each have incredible potential. And we just have to believe and have faith that God runs the world. We have to try, make our best efforts, and let God do the rest. Now, my father believed in us so much. In fact, there was a time when I was still a legal secretary and I was going to college. And my father thought I was a lawyer before I was a lawyer. And he calls me up one day and says, Ruchi, I'm in Manhattan by the newspaper stand, and I see a magazine that says the top 50 lawyers in the country. So I bought it, but I didn't see your name in here. And I would say, oh, Tati, I don't know if I'll ever get into a magazine like that. But that was my father. He just had this incredible confidence in us. And it was almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe in your children and you encourage them, you just never know what they can achieve when they grow up. So, by the way, folks, if you figure out how old I am by the time I'm finished, that's perfectly fine. But I grew up in the 1970s and 1980s. It was a great time to be a kid during those years. We weren't pushed. We weren't under pressure. In fact, I was the oldest grandchild of Holocaust survivors. My generation proved that Am Yisrael Chai V'Kayam, the Jewish nation, is eternal. My grandfather and my grandmother survived Auschwitz and the concentration camps. But now my generation proved that not only are there survivors and children, but now there are grandchildren. So when we went to school, all we had to do was breathe. We inhaled oxygen, exhaled carbon dioxide, and we were called precious children, tire kind. That's all that was expected of us, is just to come and do your best. So if you have a child or a grandchild who doesn't seem to be succeeding or doing well in school, don't give up, because you never know what that child can achieve. Now, I want to talk a little bit about one of the things that are so important to me and why I really accept invitations to go around and speaking. Because the main message that I want to share with you people, with you wonderful audience at this synagogue, and anyone else who could hear what I'm saying, is that we all have our different Jewish values and we all have our standards. We're all different, but we all have something in us, in our hearts and our souls, that connects us to God. And whatever you have that connects you to God, hold on to it and never let go. When you go through life, you're going to come challenges. And whether you're in the corporate world, the medical world, the legal world, wherever you find yourself and you want to achieve, you're going to find yourself confronted with a challenge. And you're going to think, oh, maybe, just maybe this time I have to compromise my standards. Maybe I have to succeed. And the answer is you don't. You don't have to. And in fact, it's just the opposite. When you stick to your values, when you stick to what is important to you and your connection to God, the message you're giving to your colleagues, your coworkers, or your supervisors is that you're a person of honesty, integrity, loyalty, commitment, dedication. And even when no one is looking, you're the woman who's going home on Friday to light the Shabbos candles. Even when no one is looking, you're the guy at the meeting who's only going to eat the food that's kosher. And what I learned along the way is that when people start to recognize that you have values and that you sincerely are dedicated to your values, you will not only earn their respect, but they won't let you let go of those values, because the outside world really wants to look up to people that have higher values. Everybody wants to look up to someone that they can aspire to. So I'll give you a couple of examples, funny stories of what I experienced along my journey. But I must give you another disclaimer. By no stretch of the imagination do I feel that anybody has to accept upon themselves the customs that I live by in the Hasidic community, because that would be ridiculous. But I'm going to share with you stories that happened along my journey when I was practicing and keeping strong to my Hasidic values and my faith. So let me talk to you about the rule of seclusion, which we call yichud in Hebrew. And that rule is that I can't be alone in a room with the door is locked with a strange man. And of course, there are different rules, what's considered a closed room, what's considered a closed secluded area. But we grow up learning about those rules. Now, I was once, when I was an attorney practicing real estate, I was doing a deal in upstate New York. And I had to deal with the Sullivan County tax collector. And up in Sullivan County, it's like a small little area. So one building is the health department, the building department. Every department that you had there was in this one building, as was the tax collector. And he was a Jewish man, very, very traditional in his faith, but not observant in terms of the Torah and mitzvos. But we became very friendly along our years of working together on this deal. And we used to have these conversations all the time. And one day I walk into his office and we sit down and he starts to close the door. So I tell him, Steve, by the way, I change all the names of all my stories. I say, Steve, the door can't be closed if it's locked from the outside, because that would be against the rules. And he looks at me and he says to me, Rachel, it's such a pleasure working with you, because there is this thick black line between us. And I know I will never go over that black line. I remember thinking to myself and telling my husband when I came home from work that day, isn't it incredible? Isn't it amazing? The rules that we have and we grew up with, and we think sometimes, oh, these rules are so restrictive. Really, these rules are protective safeguards. And all you have to do is open up any magazine or any news site, and all you keep on hearing is of allegations that people have to confront of inappropriate behavior that could have happened decades ago, which could prevent them from getting jobs or make them lose their jobs. And I tell my husband, how could anybody know what is inappropriate behavior if they're never taught what is appropriate behavior? So these rules that we have in the Hasidic community actually didn't hold me back from succeeding, but they actually gave me the safeguards that I needed to help me. I'll share with you an interesting story about one of our rules of modesty. So in the Hasidic community, the rules of modesty actually translate into customs that go into every aspect of our lives, the way we dress, the way we act. So the way I'm dressed today, it, of course, is in conformity with the Hasidic standards of modesty. So my hair is covered, I'm wearing a wig, and my dress is covered, my neckline and my skirts cover my knees, and my sleeves cover my elbow. And we just grow up this way, and we're just so accustomed to it. So at one point, I had been a legal secretary for many, many years, and I decided it's time to leave Brooklyn and get a job in Manhattan, get a job in the city, in the real big firms. And I was able to get that. And it was actually at that job when I realized I can't be a secretary my whole life. I must move on because I was working for lawyers that were younger than me. At that point, I was 30 years old. I enrolled in college. And what happened is at that time, colleges began to open up that were catering to the Hasidic and ultra-Orthodox community. Because before that, there weren't any colleges that did. And I wasn't going to be a rebel or a revolutionary. And we were told that we didn't belong in colleges because it was not a good environment for us. So when colleges opened up, I was able to go because Hasidim were nonconformists. We don't change, but opportunities change. And when they change, we're all in it. So it was at this law firm that I was working. It was at the time that I turned 30 and I was going to college already. And I learned about the concept called Dress Down Friday. Rabbi, I don't know if you have this in the corporate world in England, but here in the States, in the summer months, the corporate offices want to make their faculty, the staff, feel more comfortable, not feel like they're working so hard, be more casual on Fridays. So you didn't have to come in your suits and your ties, but there were some rules by and large, but more or less, as long as you weren't coming in a bathing suit and flip-flops, you can come to work just casual and feel like you're not working so hard. So I come from Borough Park. And in Borough Park, we like to dress up. We like to wear our jewelry, we like to wear makeup. We dress up in Borough Park. And here I was going to work in Manhattan, and I had to dress down every Friday. So every Friday I had the same dilemma. What am I going to wear? So I had this dress back then, which was a denim dress. And it had sleeves that I would call them borderline sleeves for me in Borough Park. Borderline sleeves meant that, let me see if I could show you. But you see, like my elbows now are covered. But it was the kind of dress that had sleeves that it covered my elbow, but if I would raise my hand, the sleeves would ride up. Now I figured to myself, I'm going to work in Lexington Avenue in Manhattan at this large firm. What do they care about Rufi Freier's sleeves and elbows? No one's going to notice anything at all. So I put the dress on, and I was always careful, of course, to make sure the sleeves don't roll up. And I'm sitting at my computer and I'm doing my typing. And one of the attorneys that I was assigned to work for, who was a Jewish young man, not observant, but very obviously understood the Jewish traditions. And I used to work for him, and we used to have conversations every other day. And I'm sitting at my desk typing this Friday morning, and he comes to me and he says to me, Rachel, I see your forearms. I want you to know that it was as if someone punched me in my stomach. The impact that his words had upon me was so profound. In fact, when I was in school, we used to have modesty teachers who would teach us about the rules of modesty and check and make sure that we're dressing appropriately. None of them ever impacted me like this young man, because the message he gave me was, I know you're Hasidic, and I know that you have to dress modestly. And I'm sure you don't know that you are not dressing modestly and that your sleeves are too short. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I came home that day and I threw out that dress. And the message that remains so much ingrained in me is that when you show people that you have values, it will not hold you back from success. And also, they will not let you let go of those values. So people always ask me, Ruchi, who is your role model? Was it RBG? Was it Golda Meir? And I say, no, none of the above. In fact, my role model was a woman who helped me reconcile how I can consider myself and be a Hasidic woman, and yes, still yet have a role in the public sphere and still be involved, and to a certain extent, in leadership among women. This woman, her name was Sarah Shanira of blessed memory. She lived in Krakow, Poland between the two world wars, and she is known as the mother of the Beis Yaakov movement. Beis Yaakov is the name of the first school for Jewish girls, and that's the school that I went to. I was taught by the students of Sarah Shanira. And I didn't know when I was a girl growing up, when I was learned about Sarah Shanira, that she was considered a revolutionary. I knew that she was a very proud Hasidic woman, and she was also a seamstress by trade. But when she saw what was happening in her time to the Jewish girls, she said, it's time for change. We must provide our Jewish daughters with a proper Jewish education. We called that time period in school the advent of the isms. Communism, socialism, Marxism, all of that was sweeping across Eastern Europe, where most of the Jewish people live. And the boys who would actually learn with Rebbes after they went to public school, the girls went to public school but had no proper Jewish education. And Sarah Shanira felt that what you learned at home wasn't enough. It had to be supplemented. Now, many years ago, I found a book about her life. And in that book, I read one of the lessons that she taught her students. And that lesson was what remained in me as the importance of having her as a role model. She taught her students that a Jewish daughter has to always have a dress with two pockets. And in one pocket, you carry one verse from Psalms, and in the other pocket, you carry another verse from Psalms. And I'll tell you what both those verses are, and I'll translate them. So King David in Psalms writes, Kokvuda bas melech penima. The modesty and the internal component of a woman is what identifies her as a Jewish woman. Whatever modesty means to you, wear it, keep it in your heart, and keep your head up high, because your modesty is something that you must be proud of. And then she taught her students, in your other pocket, you carry another verse from Psalms. Esla sosla Hashem. There comes a time to act for God. A time, girls, where you must get up, act, and be leaders, because people are trampling Torah values. And she taught these young, single Jewish girls in Poland to be Jewish teachers. And at that age, before there were telephones and emails and technology, they were traveling across the different shtetls of Poland, starting schools for Jewish girls. So that is my role model, and that is how I reconcile my identity as a Hasidic woman. And I still have the ability to practice what I do and to be a leader in a certain sense. Many people had predicted that if I would go to law school or I would and become a professional, I would compromise my Hasidic values. They said it's impossible to have the best of both worlds. If you're going to go to school, Ruchi, you're not going to be as good a mother, and you won't remain as committed to your Hasidic tradition and values. And that was something that really worried me, because remaining true to our values, to my values, was very, very important. So I made my deal with God when I entered law school, because that I felt was a real challenging environment. When I went to college, it was a college for Jewish girls with separate classes for men and women. But now I'm going into a very liberal academic environment of law school. So I made my deal with God. Please, God, help me get through law school without compromising my values. And when your children come to me for help, I will help them. And God didn't waste any time in testing me. Shortly after I graduated law school, I got involved with working with kids at risk. But what was an offer to help one woman with her child who was going through a very difficult childhood and adulthood and exhibiting behavior that was considered antisocial and at risk, I offered to help her. And when I helped her, she told me about her friend, and her friend told me about her friend, all who were going through challenges with their children. And I realized these weren't bad boys. These are primarily teenage boys in the Hasidic community. So they were making bad choices because they had been traumatized. And then a couple of years later, but people heard that I was doing public advocacy work, a group of women who wanted to join the very, very respected EMS agency in the Jewish community called Hatzalah, they asked me to help them because they were banned from entering and joining the men. The organization is an incredible organization, been around for about 50 years, saving thousands of lives every year. And they respond to calls to men and women, but they don't allow women to join their ranks. So when the women asked me to help them, I couldn't say no. It was all part of my deal with God. I was criticized. Didn't realize the extent of the opposition. If anybody has a chance to, you want to see a documentary film about the organization that I formed, which is called Ezras Nashim, check out 93 Queen. That's the number 9, the number 3, and the word Queen, Queen. That film documents our journey of starting Ezras Nashim. But what happened was, the people who opposed me started to say, this is part of Rachel Freier's radical feminist agenda. This is all part of her push for women's rights. And I said, I'm not doing this because of women's rights. It just happens to be that most of the time, women are right, especially when it comes to our medical care. But I was doing it just because there were so many stories that I heard of women who had emergency childbirth. And when the men came, the trauma that lingered is something that they just couldn't forget. So at this point, I could say proudly, and thanks with God's help, we did get our license to operate, and we just got our brand new ambulance just a couple of weeks ago, which we're still waiting for certification from the New York State Health Department. But with God's help, we were able to overcome every single one of the challenges that people said it's impossible and it's never going to happen. So let me tell you, backtrack a little bit of how did it come to be that I was able to actually become a judge. So when my mother's sister was getting married, she was dating this young man who wanted to become a lawyer. And my uncle Duvi ended up becoming a lawyer and then becoming a judge. And he was my mentor. I used to spend many hours in his courtroom doing internships for him. And I used to always tell him, Duvi, I'd love to be a judge one day just like you. Well, in 2016, he calls me up and says to me, Ruchi, I'm going to be retiring this year. And if you still want to be a judge, you have to run for my original seat. My uncle first started out in civil court, which is where I am right now, and then it was elevated to the state Supreme Court. But when he retired, his original seat is what opened up. And I thought to myself, oh no, how am I going to handle a campaign? It's enough that I do all this public advocacy and I have a law practice. How's my husband going to handle this? So let's face it, ladies, no matter what we do, no matter how independent we are, in order for us to succeed, we need the support of men in our lives. So I remember it was around Sukkah's time. We were sitting in the Sukkah, and I had to present this idea to my husband and my children. And I said to them, as I'm serving the chicken soup, my uncle called me today, and he said that he's going to be retiring and that I should run for his seat, civil court judge. There was total silence in the Sukkah. Everybody put the soup down, the spoon down. And my husband looks at me and he says, you want to be a judge? We'll have good health insurance coverage. Go for it. Well, let me tell you, everybody, it wasn't just me who ran for judge. It was me and my husband and my children, my entire family. It really was at that point where I could say that it really was the major turning point in the support of my husband and my children. Because people often ask me, how did your journey affect your husband and your children? And truth be told, when they were younger, my children did have a hard time. People, and especially kids in their class, would taunt them and say, what's your mother doing? No one else does this. Why is she doing this? And it took years for the community to really realize that I am committed to my community. I am committed to Hasidic values. And even though I wanted to do something which was unusual for Hasidic women, it was coming from a good place, not from a bad place. So I think I want to take just a little break now, Rabbi, perhaps, and maybe respond to some questions from your listeners, because I could talk and talk for such a long time, but I really want to be responsive. I want to hear the questions that are coming from the Bushy Synagogue, so I could really address them and really like connect with your members.
I just wanted to first introduce myself. My name is Elchanan Feldman. I'm a Brooklyn boy, and along with Rabbi Nick, we look after the community along with our Rebbitzins. It's really fantastic to have you on. My mother lives on 16th Avenue, so not too far away.
So do I. 16th Avenue. Look at that.
Yeah. So for us, it's really a great and wonderful privilege to have you on. We're going to see if we can have the community, if they have any questions specifically to ask. The easiest function that people can use in order to do that will be if you go everyone goes onto their participants icon, which is normally in the bottom of the page. You're able to use a function called raising hand. And if you do that, then we'll be able to see if anyone has their hands up to specifically ask questions, and that would be really great. So people feel free to raise their hands up for any questions. But I guess just to get started, do you think that maybe because although you had the challenges within your community, within my community, our community, of getting started, also the fact that there's such a predominance of Jewish and also frum people in New York helped you to be able to achieve the positions that you achieved?
So interesting question, because I think that the main thing that really helped me was Siyata Deshmaya, divine providence, that's for sure. I think that the women really came out when I was running. I think it was the women that really made a big difference, because when we had election day, it was incredible to see how many women were coming. So it was a combination of the women, it was a combination of my children and my husband. And what my husband did was he went to so many rabbis and he actually got them to endorse me. And then we went and we advertised and we publicized those endorsements, which really for me was very heartwarming to see that the rabbis get it. They didn't say, no, she can't do it. They didn't say there was nothing wrong with what I was doing. And that was always my goal, to blend the two worlds. The two worlds can go together. It's not one is exclusive of the other. I see you have some hands up. You want to call on somebody,
Absolutely.
Rabbi?
Yes. So next person will be Shlomo. If you could please unmute yourself, and then you can ask a question. Of course, if anyone feels more comfortable to put their questions in the chat function for us to ask on your behalf, please feel free to do so, as well as Rabbi Nick has just said. So Shlomo, if you please unmute yourself to ask the question.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. Good evening, Your Honor, or it is from here. We have something in common. I have recently retired as a judge after 22 years on the bench. And ich bin auch ein Hasidische. So I loved your talk. It was fantastic, and I can see we share a number of Hamish values, except I'm sure your cooking is better than mine. So what I want to ask you is this. I sat with a couple and a beard, so I was a little more obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever experienced any form of anti-Semitism?
So that's a great question that many people ask me. And I could say that, thank God, Baruch Hashem, I did not. That's not to say that I didn't have experiences where people were just not nice. So I don't know if it was because I worked with people who were just not nice to many people, or if it was particular anti-Semitism. I always had this idea, this notion that if I were to come forward and explain who I am and be open about my Yiddishkeit and my Hasidic background, that I wanted to break barriers before they would be built. So I would automatically come in and say every Friday, I need to leave early because of the Sabbath. And I would come with some challah rolls or some chocolate rugelach to say, I want to share my Shabbos experience with you. Before the holidays, I'll come in with honey cookies to say that this is what we eat to have a sweet new year. And I find that by doing these little things, that would prevent it before it would sprout and grow. So I think that protected me. Of course, God protected me. Then again, some people are just not nice. So, and if I ever had that experience, I would just move on. Just move on. The city was big enough.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shlomo, thank you very much. We're going to go to Amanda now.
Hello. I'd like to ask you, thank you so much before I start for your brilliant speech. It's amazing. And we're all richer for having listened to you. Can I ask, first and foremost, that do you have a particular discipline that you would have liked to have gone into in law generally? And the second question is your client base. Is it outside of obviously the Jewish community or within?
Okay. So my client base, it's not relevant for now because once you sit on the bench as a judge, full-time judge, you cannot have private clients anymore. When I was in private practice, my clients were all Hasidim. And against what all the naysayers said, they said they'll never come to you. But they were the first ones that came clamoring to me because I spoke Yiddish and I understood the values. So I was able to speak to their rabbis because very often they would have a contract that was a legal contract, but they always had the deals they made in the shul, in the synagogue, and all these little papers that we called setlach. They would just like jot down their agreements and they would come to me, this is what we agreed on. And I would say, fine, let's read it together. So that was my client base. In terms of now, fascinating question, because my background was real estate law, but I did a lot of mentoring with kids at risk. And my very first assignment on the bench was in criminal court. And you know, there's an expression in Yiddish, was men tit vayener, tit men harziach. When you do a mitzvah for somebody else, you're going to find out one day that you're helping yourself. So there I was, right before I'm getting on the bench, 2 weeks before the term starts, and they tell me, Judge Freier, you're going to be assigned to Brooklyn Criminal Court. I said, you got to be kidding. What do I know about criminal law? I grew up in the Hasidic community. We don't even watch movies. You know, criminal law was my hardest subject in law school. I didn't know the difference between a lineup and a show up. Anyhow, they said, don't worry because we'll train you. And judge school was 3 days. But when I got on the bench, I realized that these young defendants that are coming and appearing before me in court are just the same like these young Hasidic boys that I counseled in my at-risk program. And I was able to relate to them just like I related to these young boys. And I would have these young men crying in my courtroom. And I would tell them, don't give up on yourself. You have to have faith. You can't control your background, but you can control your future. The past is beyond you, but your future is ahead of you. And I found that I really had an interest in the types of laws that can make a difference in people's lives. So we get assignments all the time differently. We're not in control of what we practice as judges, but I've learned that the law is just so fascinating. But the ones that I could use, the ones that I really feel like I'm really helping people are the ones that give me the biggest feeling of satisfaction.
Okay, thank you very much for the question.
Thank you.
We're going to hand over now to Amanda to be able to ask a question as well.
Judge Freier, you're incredibly inspiring. You're a trailblazer. Have you had other younger women come to you, young girls or women, and say that they'd like to follow in your footsteps and follow you, maybe not into law, but into something that perhaps wouldn't necessarily be obviously open to Hasidic women now? And what advice do you give them if?
Amazing question. Yes, I have, and I'm so happy to be able to say that many young girls and even older girls and older women have come to me and say they want to go into law or into medicine, because as a director of Ezras Nashim, I became an EMT and then a paramedic. So I'm counseling young girls who want to go on to paramedic school, nursing school, become labor coaches, and I'm coaching girls who want to go to law school. And in fact, 2 years ago, one of my interns who worked for me in court, and I always take in these young Jewish girls as interns, my very first intern was another bubby, a grandmother from Borough Park, like myself. And she said that my story inspired her. So, and now she does criminal defense work in Brooklyn. Imagine.
Fantastic.
Yes, so, Baruch Hashem, I feel very blessed that I'm able to see that I was able to open the doors. And for me, it's not just that they're pursuing higher education, but they're doing it without compromising our traditions and our values.
Okay, thank you. It's great to hear.
Amanda, thank you very much. We're going to go over to the Vogels, to Michelle Vogel, I believe has a question. If you can unmute yourself.
Thank you very much, Judge Freier. I greatly admire your achievements, and you're indeed a great role model for young women in the community. So my question sort of overlaps with Amanda's, but I was wondering, you've had great encouragement, obviously, from your husband and family, but are you ever invited into the religious girls' schools to talk, not just to wait for them to approach you if they feel they want to do something, but to actually be a role model and say, you can all do this. This is what you can aspire to. And would you get encouragement for that from the men within the community?
So yes, I do get invited very often. Now with COVID, that has stopped, unfortunately. So I do things by Zoom. But I have been invited to many, many girls' schools, not just in the States, but around the world to speak with them. And in terms of, what was the second part of your question? It was a compound question, I'm so sorry. In terms of the men, how the men feel? Excellent question, excellent question. So some men are incredibly supportive. I think the vast majority are. They tell me everybody has, a mother, a daughter, a sister, a grandchild who they want me to speak with to encourage them to pursue their dreams. But Michelle, there still are a small amount of people who are behind. They're 1 century behind. I was just this week, I was in the grocery buying myself a cup of coffee in the morning. And the cashier is a young Hasidic guy who's very, very proud that Borough Park has the first Hasidic judge right in their midst. And he was telling the guy ahead of me, like, hurry up. The judge is due. Like, I had to be, and I said, don't worry, it's okay. I'll wait my turn. You don't have to hurry up. And the man who was in front of me, I would estimate he must have been in his 60s or 70s with a white beard. He says to the cashier, by us, the women belong in the kitchen. Women shouldn't be out in the public by us. And the cashier looked like he was going to have a heart attack, like he didn't know what to say. And I smiled and I said, it's okay. It's a free country. Everybody can have their own opinion. But Michelle, I know that I won. I won the election. The people in Borough Park voted for me. It wasn't like I was appointed or nominated. I had to run and I had to win the popular vote. And I did. So some people, it'll just take them a little bit longer to catch on. But the next generation, it's already, the trail has been blazed. The next generation won't have a problem.
Thank you, Michelle. We're going to hand over to James, who has a question as well. James, over to you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, Judge. I think, Judge, it's the first time I've ever noticeably seen the rabbi starstruck. Whether it's because you're a New Yorker or not, I don't know, but you should know it's a tremendous achievement. You've been incredibly inspirational. What I want to ask you is, what do you think you being an observant Jew has brought to the bench, an observant Jewish woman? What has that brought to the bench? And what has the bench brought to your, and maybe your legal experience, brought to your Yiddishkeit? How have the two interacted?
Amazing. When I was first sitting in criminal court, I was interviewed by a very famous rabbinate in Israel. And she asked me then, Ruchi, you're in criminal court and you hear about these terrible crimes all day. How do you like leave it at work and go home and not be troubled all the time at night by what you hear all day in court? And I pondered, I said to Rebbitzin, I don't bring my work home with me. It's the reverse. I bring my home to work with me. It's the Hasidic values of tzedek, justice, emes, truth, chesed, compassion. All of those values are what I bring to the courthouse with me. And the pride of our tradition and the pride of our faith. I mean, you go into most courthouses here in the States, you'll see on the outside engravings of Moses holding the 10 Commandments. You'll see paintings of Moses holding, because in this country recognize that the Torah was the first set of laws that have, and an understanding of a world that's been so insular that the bench hasn't really been exposed to. So when judges have questions about the Hasidic faith or the Jewish traditions, they know that they can ask me any question. And I want to be there. I want to be there to explain, to shatter the myths that there are out there. And in terms of what I have learned is how grateful I am to be who I am. The more people had always predicted that the more successful I'll be, the more I'll wander away from my community. And it was just the opposite. The higher I go, the more I realize I'm so fortunate to be part of the Hasidic community. It's these values and these traditions that keep me strong and help me overcome the challenges, because I know that God is always with me. So the incredible thing about the courts in the States is in every courthouse where the judge sits, right above the judge are the words, "In God we trust." If anybody questions my decision, I'll just point and I'll say, there's a God up there, and that's all I care about.
James, thank you very much. One question which came in from a private message. I'll just kind of expand the question a little bit. Obviously, it was Siyata Dishmaya. It was Hashem helping you that that the specific position which you were going for was in the civil circuit, and therefore there probably wouldn't be that many conflicts with you know, our principles and our values. Do you think that you would find it more challenging if you had to deal with other aspects of law which might have conflicts, or even in the civil circuit? Do you find sometimes there are challenges with our beliefs versus what you have to adjudicate on?
Okay. So that's an excellent question, because when we're trained as judges, we're told that there are going to come cases in front of you that you're going to have to recuse yourself, because you're going to have to say, I can't handle this case. And there are cases where if any of the parties are former employees or employers, close relationships, if somebody is a close friend of mine, or so there are many, many cases that would bring the situation where I would have to recuse myself. So as of right now, I did not have any case where I felt that I would compromise my values. I sit in a secular court, and it's New York law that prevails. And I'm there to adjudicate New York law. But if there ever would be a time when I would feel conflicted, I would do what every judge does when there's a conflict. You accuse yourself. And it happens very, very often. And there's just a mechanism how to deal with it. So it's not something that would really present a difficult, unresolvable problem.
I think that's really good for us to hear that. Also, you know, that you don't have to compromise, but also that you never needed to compromise as well. Another question which came in was regarding your family, and you said they were very supportive, but specifically, let's say your siblings, or you know, not your children or husband. How did you manage that dynamic? And have you found anyone in your family who perhaps seem to have taken some braver steps, because knowing that you were in some ways a trailblazer, but in an appropriate manner?
So my family, the ones who perhaps are not supportive at this point would be too embarrassed to say that, because you say the name Freier in Borough Park and they'll say, oh, the judge, like the name Freier became synonymous with my position. And thank God, they're so proud of me. So if anybody had any doubts, like I say, the real doubts and the real naysayers were years ago, 20 years ago, when I was just embarking on my journey. Everybody was worried. Rufi, your kids are busy, you're working and you have babysitters, and how are they going to grow up? What's going to be? And I said, look here, Hashem runs the world. I know I'm doing nothing wrong. And I always felt that God put this inspiration inside of me. It wasn't that God doesn't make any mistakes. And if God made me want to go to law school, and he created me as a Hasidic woman, that means it's possible. If God doesn't make any mistakes. Had he created me as a man, it would have been a complete different story. But God made me a woman, and he made me want to do all these things. And like I said, it was that book about Sarah Schneer which gave me that inspiration that, yes, it's okay. There are some people who feel that women have to be in the kitchen. in my humble opinion, I think that's a disorder. I think that we could be in the kitchen and in the courtroom, and I love my kitchen. I have 3 sinks, and I have 2 stoves, 3 stoves. My kitchen is that's my heart. I make my challahs every week, but being in the kitchen doesn't mean that I can't be in the courtroom. And that's the thing that I wanted to prove for myself. I never thought that my personal journey would be something that people around the world would be interested in hearing. It was just me proving it to myself that the concept of being devoutly religious and being successful in the professional world, they were not mutually exclusive. You can combine them and you can have the best of both worlds.
You know, I know that this is another question, and once again, I'm just broadening out a little bit. I know what you do. You do l'shem shamayim. I mean, you do it for obviously for all the right reasons. But you have become a bit of a celebrity, which has a tremendous advantage to it of your reach and what you can hopefully, as you already have, influence in such a positive way, and I'm sure you will continue to do so. But that celebrity status, we could think of Judge Judy and different people like that. I assume these things don't speak to you, but do you think there is a forum, or there would be the appropriate forum for you to have a wider audience that you could communicate with, or your more subtle way is the way that you'd like to go forward with?
So what would be a wider audience than what I'm doing right now, zooming to this great synagogue in England? I think that's amazing. I think it's amazing that you invited me and that I had this opportunity. I love meeting people. I love speaking to people. So for me, it's something that I just really enjoy doing. I don't know what you mean by a wider audience. Share that with me, Rabbi. What would you mean by that?
Oh, I don't know. I'm like, maybe a podcast regularly, or maybe some type of other means of having a regular communication with a larger group. The Nachum Siegel show. I mean, they won't know what that is exactly, but some other mechanism like that.
No, that's interesting. I think that would be too much time that I wouldn't have. I don't know about that, but when I did the film 93 Queen, people asked me like, how did I agree to do that? And when the filmmaker first contacted me, when Assassination was just starting, I said to her, absolutely not. I'm Hasidic. We don't go to the movies, let alone be the subject of one. And she said to me then that there's such a negative stereotype about Hasidim in the media, especially the women, that if I allowed her to film me, it would shatter the stereotype specifically about Hasidic women. And I said, no, it's not enough for me to take this risk of doing a film. But then she said to me, Ruchi, but if you let me do this film, it'll be such a Kiddush Hashem. It'll sanctify God's name. I said, if I can sanctify God's name, that's my soft spot. I'll go to the rabbi and let's see if we can make it work. So whatever I can do to be Mekadesh Shem Shemayim, to let the world know that the Torah values are the values that really give us life. It gives us sustenance. It gives us the direction that we need to navigate through all of life's challenges. So if there's any other way that I can get this message out there, Rabbi, just let me know.
Thank you so much, Judge Ruchi. So the question I wanted to share, which actually someone else has messaged us as well now, is we're seeing actually with lockdown, a lot of women who have returned to working from home or being at home, but generally there are women who are in high-powered places who have stepped down from that and have shown us that the kind of feminist illusion of women being able to have it all is just that, an illusion. But it sounds like you've managed to get that balance between having such a central role in your home and also having, this incredible career and affecting your community and society as a whole. What's your secret? Can women really have it all?
So I can really just share with you my journey and how it happened for me. How it happened for me is I got married at a young age. I was engaged when I was 18, married by 19, and had my children when I was young. I didn't start going to college until I was 30. When my first semester in college, my 4th child was born, and I did college very, very slowly. If it took me 6 years. And during those 6 years, I was still cooking and baking and cleaning, working as a legal secretary, and getting my undergraduate degree. When I was 36, I went to law school. At that point already, my 6 children were born, but law school was part-time also. So what I think people who perhaps push off having families and realizing that that is really, I mean, that is really the biggest accomplishment that we have, is to build a Jewish home. So I was able to do that and really push off going to school. It wasn't anything that I planned. I was just taking this step by step as the thoughts came to me and as opportunities opened up. I couldn't go to college when I was 18 because there were no colleges for Hasidic girls back then. So looking back, I can say it's not because I'm so smart that I figured this out. This is how it happened. This is how I was able to do it. So when young girls come to me and they say, I'm going to take an accelerated program, I want to get through college in 2 years, I say, what's the rush? Why put yourself under such incredible pressure? So I didn't have a quote unquote profession when I was in my 20s or my 30s. I didn't become a lawyer until I was already 40. And then to become a judge, you have to be a lawyer at least 10 years. So you can figure out how old I am. So I did it really very slowly, and my children were always most important. It doesn't mean that I was able to go to every school play or every school function or every birthday party that there was, but my kids always knew that they were so important to me. And every kid came to college with me. Every kid came to at least one law school class with me, so that when I said mommy's going to school, they know where I'm going. So that's how I was able to do it. The challenges that I see women face is when they don't have time to build their families. They don't have time. And then again, we, thank God, have the Shabbos. Every week, I know, comes Friday night. I love it when Shabbos starts early. Then it's the best. Every Shabbos, the grandchildren come over. The kids come over. There's no cell phones, there's no computers. So that's when I connect and bond with my children and grandchildren. And Shabbos comes every week. So I think that that's why I say I feel very blessed and fortunate that I come from this tight-knit Hasidic community. I live near my parents, live near my in-laws. My grandparents, you know, of blessed memory, also live near me. So when you have your family and you have your faith and you don't push off raising your children, then I think it's with God's help, you can really have the best of both worlds. I'm not saying that it's easy, Rebbetzin, it's really hard. Anything worthwhile is going to come hard. Anything worthwhile is going to be filled with challenges. I never said it was easy. My journey was not an easy one. My journey was full of challenges and studying late at night and not always doing the best on every exam, not passing every exam. I didn't pass every exam the first time, but that didn't stop me from trying again. You don't pass the first time, you take it a second time. You take it until you're going to pass. So realizing that success is in the hands of Hashem, and that the Torah and mitzvot and the holidays and the Shabbos is what keeps us together and gives us the nachas. So to me, that's called having it all. If I can have my family, the nachas of my children and grandchildren, and still have the profession, I don't say career, because the word career has this connotation that your family's on the back burner and that your career comes first. I have a profession. I'm a professional. I love the work that I do, but my family is always the center of my life.
Thank you so much. And I think, although there are more questions coming in, I know the hour's getting late for us, and I know you're a very busy lady, so I'm conscious that I think we're going to end there, even though there are some, you know, people, I think people could happily ask you questions all evening, but wow, what a way for us to start our BLT series. And I have to say, for me personally, when I was 18 years old, I was accepted into a few medical schools in this country, and I decided that I didn't think the sort of yeshiva boy that I wanted to marry would be interested in marrying a girl who was in medical school, and I decided that that wasn't right for me now. And at the time I said, you know, Eretz Hashem, when I'm 40, I'm going to go to medical school. So I'm not quite there, I'm almost 40, and maybe after this evening you've inspired me that actually, you know, it's not too late, and there's a time and a place for everything. But I think more importantly than that, we're very lucky that our daughter's listening, who's 13 years old, and her Hasidic best friend is also on the Zoom call at the moment. And what I love about them is unlike me, when they have discussions about what they want to do when they're older, there's no, well, you can't do this or you can't do that. And after this evening, they can always say, yeah, well, Judge Ruchi did it, so why can't we? So thank you for all the inspiration that you've given to all of us this evening, and for all the incredible things that you are doing. I'd like to say a big thank you to you, really, for spending the time with us tonight.
Sure. I'll just end off telling you that you can share my email address with your wonderful community, because some people have questions that sometimes are too sensitive or personal. So my email is judgefreier@gmail.com. If you could spell judge and you could spell Freier, you'll find me. And I love to end off with a small little Hasidic story about Reb Zisha of Anapol. Reb Zisha was one of the earliest Hasidic rabbis, lived in the 18th century in Anapol. And on his deathbed, Reb Zisha is crying bitter tears. And his students, the Hasidim, ask him, Reb Zisha, why are you crying? You're such a holy man. You're going straight to Gan Eden. And Reb Zisha says, I'm not crying because they're going to ask me in heaven, Zisha, why weren't you like Moses? And I'm not crying because they're going to ask me, Zisha, why weren't you like King David? I'm crying because they're going to ask me, Zisha, why weren't you like Zisha could have been? We all have so much potential in us. We're created b'tselem Elohim, in the image of God. You don't know what your potential is. You don't know what you can accomplish. You just have to try. I had naysayers every step of the way, and they were all proven wrong. Just believe, have faith that God runs the world, and make your best efforts, and you'll be successful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Judge Ruchi. What an incredible, amazing evening. And I think the message for all of us, it's never too late. We can all take from your inspiration, and really it should make a difference in each of our lives. I'd like to say a massive thank you to Rabbi Nick and Shira for making tonight happen. For all of those who enjoyed a yummy supper this evening, thank you to Jonathan Robinson for organizing that, and also to let you know that this is the start of a 4-part series, so please all make sure to tune in. Next week we've got Mo Manik speaking to us, another inspirational speaker, continuing on the theme of Don't Stop Me Now, hearing from incredible people how they've met their challenges in life and how they're not allowing anything to stop them. And to our amazing educational team for putting this all together, to the Office of the Chief Rabbi for sponsoring this evening, and really for everyone. It's unbelievable for us to see so many of you here together with us, even though we can't be together in person, but this wonderful community spirit of being together here on Zoom. Thank you all for joining us, and we hope that you all have a wonderful week.
Thank you.